Welcome to Aquatic Biology. Today, we are going to explore the fascinating world of lakes. Have you ever wondered why some lakes are perfectly round while others are long and jagged? Or why some are crystal clear while others are murky? By the end of this lecture, you will understand exactly how massive geological forces create these bodies of water and how we can classify them, both biologically and mathematically. Let us dive in. To begin our journey, we must first define what a lake actually is. Imagine leaving a plastic tarp out in the rain. Water naturally pools in the dips and wrinkles. The Earth's crust works the same way. A lake is a large inland body of standing water, occupying a localized depression, known as a basin. Because the water is relatively still compared to a rushing river, we call it a lentic ecosystem, from the Latin word for sluggish. The comprehensive study of these inland waters, including their physical and biological properties, is called limnology. Understanding this is crucial because lakes hold most of our accessible liquid freshwater. Now that we understand what a lake is, let us look at how their basins are formed, starting with the most common type, glacial lakes. During the last ice age, massive glaciers moved across the Earth. Think of these glaciers as giant frozen bulldozers. As they slowly advanced, they scraped away topsoil and carved deep, irregular gouges into the solid bedrock. When the global climate eventually warmed, these massive ice sheets melted. The resulting meltwater filled the very gouges they had just carved out, creating thousands of glacial lakes. This immense power of moving ice is responsible for the vast majority of lakes we see on our planet today. Moving on from ice, let us explore the fiery and violent power of the Earth's crust. Tectonic lakes are formed by the massive movements of tectonic plates. When these colossal plates pull apart or slip past one another, the crust fractures. This violent shifting can create deep, steep-sided trenches known as grabens. Over time, water fills these massive geological scars to form tectonic lakes. Because they are born from deep faults in the Earth, tectonic lakes are often some of the oldest and deepest lakes in the world. A perfect example is Lake Baikal in Russia, which holds a massive portion of the world's fresh water. Another fascinating method of lake formation comes from volcanic activity. When a massive volcano erupts, it empties its underground magma chamber. Without that underlying support, the top of the volcano can actually collapse inward upon itself. This catastrophic collapse forms a massive, bowl-shaped depression called a caldera. Over centuries, rainwater and snowmelt slowly fill this caldera. The result is a volcanic lake. Because of how they are formed, these lakes are typically very deep, incredibly clear, and almost perfectly circular in shape. They are truly some of the most visually stunning bodies of water on the entire planet. Finally, let us look at a much gentler process of lake formation. Fluvial lakes are created by the continuous, gentle action of flowing rivers over flat plains. As a river winds and bends its way across a landscape, it naturally erodes the outer banks and deposits sediment on the inner banks. Over a long period of time, a river can actually cut off a wide, meandering loop from its main channel to take a shorter, straighter path. The abandoned crescent-shaped body of water left behind is known as an oxbow lake. This shows us that even slow, gentle water can permanently reshape the geography of the Earth. Now that we know how lakes are born, We must classify them by their biological productivity, known as their trophic state. Young lakes are typically oligotrophic. They are deep, cold, and lack nutrients, resulting in crystal clear, highly oxygenated water perfect for trout. As these lakes age, they naturally accumulate nutrients from the surrounding landscape, transitioning into mesotrophic lakes with moderate plant life. Eventually, they become eutrophic lakes. These are shallow, warm, and packed with nutrients. While highly productive, this can lead to murky waters and massive algae blooms that deplete oxygen. Understanding this aging process helps us manage and protect these vital ecosystems. Now that we have explored the biological side, let us look at how to scientifically classify a lake's physical shape. To do this, limnologists use a mathematical measurement called the Shoreline Development Index. Conceptually, this index compares the actual shoreline of a lake to the circumference of a perfect circle with the exact same area. Let us look at the formula. D subscript L represents the Shoreline Development Index, which is a dimensionless number. L stands for the total length of the lake's shoreline in kilometers. A represents the total surface area of the lake in square kilometers. If the area remains constant, but the shoreline becomes more jagged or elongated, the value of L increases. This causes the entire index to increase, indicating a more complex shoreline. Before we move on, let us see this formula in action with a concrete example. A team of limnologists is studying a volcanic crater lake. We are given a surface area of 3.14 square kilometers and a measured shoreline length of 6.28 kilometers. We want to find the Shoreline Development Index. First, we calculate the denominator, which represents the circumference of a perfect circle with the same area. Substituting our area and using pi as 3.14, the math simplifies beautifully. The square root of 3.14 squared is just 3.14. Multiplying by 2 gives a denominator of 6.28. Dividing our actual shoreline by this denominator gives exactly 1.0. Physically, this means the lake is a perfect circle, which perfectly matches its origin as a collapsed volcanic caldera. Now, let us apply the exact same formula to a massive tectonic graben lake. Here, we are given a surface area of 100 square kilometers, but a highly elongated shoreline measuring 150 kilometers. Again, we start with the denominator to find the theoretical circular circumference. We substitute the area of 100 and multiply by pi to get 314.159 inside the square root. Taking the square root gives approximately 17.72. Multiplying by 2 yields a denominator of 35.44 kilometers. Finally, we divide our actual shoreline of 150 by this theoretical circumference. The result is approximately 4.23. Because this value is much greater than 1, it mathematically proves the lake is highly elongated, which makes perfect sense for a tectonic trench. Now that we have used this formula successfully, let us understand where its denominator actually comes from. The text states that the denominator represents the circumference of a perfect circle with the exact same area as the lake. Let us prove this mathematically. We start by imagining a perfectly circular lake with an area designated as A. From basic geometry, we know the formula for the area of a circle is A equals pi times r squared, where r is the radius. To find the circumference later, we first need to isolate the radius. We divide both sides by pi and then take the square root. This gives us an expression for the radius. R equals the square root of A divided by pi. This sets up the foundation for our final calculation. So we have proven that the radius is the square root of a over pi. This brings us to the final step of our derivation. We know the circumference of any circle is c equals 2 times pi times the radius. We simply substitute our previous expression for r into this circumference formula. Now, to simplify this algebraically, we can bring the pi that is outside the square root inside it. When pi goes inside a square root, it becomes pi squared. The pi squared in the numerator and the pi in the denominator partially cancel out, leaving just a single pi in the numerator. This simplifies beautifully to c equals 2 times the square root of pi times a. We have just proven that the denominator is exactly the shoreline length of a perfectly circular lake. Now that we understand the math, let us look at this diagram to visually connect a lake's origin to its shape and index value. In the top left, we see a glacial lake. Notice how jagged and irregular the shoreline is, carved by ice. This results in a high index value. On the top right, the tectonic lake sits in a long, straight trench, also giving it an elongated shape and a high index. In the bottom left, look at the volcanic lake. It is a nearly perfect circle inside the caldera, which is why its index is exactly 1. Finally, in the bottom right, the fluvial oxbow lake has a distinct crescent shape left behind by the winding river. This visual summary perfectly bridges the gap between physical geography and our mathematical index. We have covered a lot of ground today, so let us summarize the most important ideas. First, lakes are not just random puddles. They are complex ecosystems born from massive geological forces, like moving glaciers, shifting tectonic plates, erupting volcanoes, and winding rivers. Second, we learned that a lake's biological classification, or trophic state, evolves over time, from cold and clear to warm and nutrient-rich. Finally, we saw how the Shoreline Development Index allows scientists to quantitatively analyze a lake's shape to uncover its geological history without even digging into the dirt. Understanding these origins is the foundational first step in aquatic biology, allowing us to protect these vital freshwater resources for future generations. Great job following along.